Good morning, San Diego. Welcome into another edition of the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning right here on San Diego's number one sports station, 97.3 The Fan. And do we have some exciting news for all of you Padre fans out there? Yes, the Padres have made a deal, at least reportedly, from multiple sources out there in Major League Baseball. Jeff Passan was one of the reporters on this. San Diego Padres are acquiring reliever Jason Adam from the Tampa Bay Rays for right-handed pitcher Dylan Lesko, outfielder Homer Bush Jr., and a third prospect, which ended up being the catching prospect that the Padres have. No, it's not Ethan Salas, but the catching prospect that the Padres have had in J.D. Gonzalez. So the Padres strike during the trade deadline, as moves were happening very rapidly throughout this week and striking early throughout this week, and some top bullpen arms already on the move, with Carlos Estevez getting sent to the Phillies yesterday and a couple other moves involving the Phillies and the Orioles. And you start looking through a lot of the deals that have already been made, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But everybody was starting to make some moves and patiently waiting for A.J. Preller to do something, and he goes out there and gets you a much-needed bullpen arm for the San Diego Padres. Now, let's talk about Jason Adam for a second before we talk more into what the Padres have given up in order to acquire an elite-level bullpen arm. Now, he's not a closer of the Tampa Bay Rays, but he was their setup man. He was able to get 4 saves so far this season, as the setup guy in Tampa, but he has the best ERA in the Rays bullpen. He has pitched the most innings out of any Rays reliever, and he has made the most appearances in the Rays bullpen. 4-2 with a 2.49 ERA, has appeared in 47 games this year, has gone 47 innings on the season, and has an ERA plus of 157. Again, ERA plus, same thing like OPS plus. It basically defines, or if you will, establishes that an average major leaguer is at the scale of 100, and then anything over 100, he's an above average player. And for the San Diego Padres, they get a reliever that's got a 157 ERA plus. His fielding independent pitching, a 3.34, and he has a 0.894 walks and hits per innings pitched. So a big addition for the San Diego Padres and Jason Adam, helping out that bullpen. Do a lot with that bullpen now, because as of right now, and even during this winning streak that the Padres have had, they have lacked the bullpen depth all year, and they've needed guys to be able to help facilitate basically the back end of Robert Suarez as the closing role and Jeremiah Estrada as the setup guy. But now acquiring Jason Adam, you have a new setup man for Robert Suarez. You can have Estrada pitch now in the 7th inning, and then you got Morejon in the 6th. Your bullpen is a lot better than it was, just mere minutes ago with this new pickup by A.J. Preller and the San Diego Padres. Helps solidifying that bullpen. We'll see if the Padres are going to make more moves out there, but as of right now, being reported, as first reported by Robert Murray, San Diego Padres acquiring reliever Jason Adam, a right-handed pitcher from the Tampa Bay Rays, for right-handed pitching prospect Dylan Lesko, outfielder Homer Bush Jr., and J.D. Gonzalez, the catching prospect for the San Diego Padres. Jason Adam has a 4-pitch mix. He uses that 4-seam fastball the most, followed by his changeup, and then he also has a slider and a sweeper. It's a good pitch arsenal for Jason Adam. His fastball comes in on average about 95 miles an hour. His changeup comes in at 89, slider at 84, and a sweeper at 78 miles an hour. A lot of good statistics in terms of metrics. Opponent's only hitting 175 against his 4-seam, 164 against his changeup, 120 against his slider, and 182 against his sweeper. So that's kind of some metrics for you, if you will, when it comes to Jason Adam. Again, the new pitcher for the San Diego Padres, being reported by Robert Murray on the deadline deal with the Tampa Bay Rays. Let's talk about what the Padres have given up. Now, the Padres It depends on what metric you look at and what ranking you look at. In fact, Jeff Passan had a great tweet last night, and it makes a lot of sense. And we try to explain this a lot during our talk shows, but a quick reminder for the trade deadline. Public prospect rankings, so that would be MLB.com, that would be Fangraphs, that would be Baseball America, anybody that ranks farm systems and ranks prospects. Quite often are not updated during the season. A lot of the times they're not 100% what organizations value, and some organizations might value players more in your org than you do because there's some things that they think they can fix or put together. He uses a couple examples for some of the pitchers or players that were sent in previous trades. But if you think that they're not good because they're ranked in the 20s before the season, you do not know ball. They are both very good. He's talking about a couple of players that were already sent. So it doesn't really, it's a tough gauge to see. As for the Padres on MLB.com, Dylan Lesko and Homer Bish Jr. are both two top 10 prospects according to MLB.com. According to Fangraphs, and again, take this for what it's worth because these are public prospect rankings. Dylan Lesko is a top 5 member of the organization in terms of prospect rankings. That's either MLB.com or Fangraphs. You keep looking at all the other ranking systems, and they're all pretty much the same. He's a top 5 level prospect. So you give up a starting pitcher, a future starting pitcher as part of this deal. He is the main chip of this deal. I think that was one of the players that you were going to have to trade at this deadline anyway to acquire anything you want. I mean, it's a seller's market. There's a lot of teams looking to buy at the deadline and not a lot of pieces available, and that's why Tampa, who is one of those teams that was a fringe team of buying or selling, decided to part ways with guys like Randy Arozarena to Seattle, and now Jason Adam with the San Diego Padres. But they acquire a pitcher in Dylan Lesko from the San Diego Padres, who is a top 5 prospect. Now, Fangraphs has a rating system of what they call future value. And in future value, it's kind of a way to roughly evaluate a player of what he could potentially be at the major league level. And I talked about that on my show last week, if you were watching or listening on 97.3 The Fan. And in that discussion, it's a lot like recruiting rankings for prospects, right? We're trying to guess what this kid would do or what this player will do at the major league level. So, and a lot of that's based on the scouting scale of 20 to 80. It's also based on what their projected future WAR is, according to Fangraphs, which would be FWAR. And so for Fangraphs, they give Dylan Lesko a future value of a 50 out of a scale from 20 to 80. So on the higher end of the future value. According to that, just in layman's terms to kind of translate for you of what he would potentially be, roughly a number 4 starter. Approximately a 4.00 fielding independent pitching, at times worse, but then with lots of innings, you're going to get a guy that's going to, be a serviceable starter at the major league level. Is he going to be an ace-type player? Probably not, but you never know with Tampa, because one of the big knocks on Dylan Lesko is his inability to throw strikes. He has gotten a little bit better at that. He's got great stuff, but he hasn't been able to find the strike zone. And so far this year, he hasn't really put up very good numbers. But, that's a type of player that Tampa Bay will acquire in a trade deadline and then flip around very quickly into a good, solid starting pitcher. Now, it doesn't happen all the time. Luis Patino went down there. Luis Patino was ranked a little bit higher than Dylan Lesko in terms of a future starting pitcher. And he never really panned out in Tampa. In fact, he's back in the Padres organization on the injured list after getting Tommy John surgery. But we'll see what happens with Dylan Lesko. Again, he's projected, according to Fangraphs, a number 4 starter. So you are giving up a depth piece as part of the organization. Dylan Lesko, for sure, would be somebody that was going to help this rotation, help the Padres save money in a couple of years to help facilitate some of those big contracts, as a number 4 or 5 starter. And instead, the Padres have decided to part ways with Dylan Lesko and acquire a bullpen piece. And we'll talk about the contract of Jason Adam in just a second. But, Dylan Lesko is the marquee piece in this deal between these two teams in terms of what the Rays are getting back. I look at Homer Bush Jr. and, he's ranked number 8 in the Padres organization in terms of MLB.com. MLB.com has Homer Bush Jr. as the 8th best prospect in the organization. According to Fangraphs, he is the 23rd best player in the Padres organization. That is a drastic difference between number 8 in one level and number 23rd in the next. So, obviously, if you're a Padres fan, you would think that, he's obviously the number 23rd. I'm going to go with Fangraphs because it looks like we didn't give up as much. But according to his future value, he's looking at like a bench place. He got a 35-plus future value number, according to Fangraphs, and that puts him in a spot where he's an up-and-down organizational player. I mean, he's a guy that's going to be up sometimes and he's going to be down, and he's going to be back and forth from the minor leagues and the major leagues, again, according to Fangraphs, with a WAR of kind of around or a little bit less than 0.1. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what he does. I mean, there's a lot of time for him to improve, but not necessarily a huge piece that the San Diego Padres are giving up. Again, this is according to Fangraphs. I mean, MLB.com's got him as the number 8th best prospect in the Padres organization. So that's a wide range that is probably going to be a project for the Tampa Bay Rays. And this is what the Rays feed off of. This is how they run their organization. They get good players when they're young. They develop them. They become great major league players. And before they have to pay these certain players, they end up shipping them out of town. And then they acquire the next scale of guys that they can save money on and develop their own way. The last piece to it, and again, he was kind of an odd man out in the organization. You can never have enough, good catching depth, just like pitching depth. But JD Gonzalez, I mean, he's ranked the 26th best player in the Padres organization, according to Fangraphs. And again, MLB.com has JD Gonzalez as the number 12th best player on MLB.com. That's a wide range again. But you look at JD Gonzalez, he's in, low A ball right now in Lake Elsinore. He's a catching prospect. He wasn't expected to get to the majors until 2028. I don't think he's necessarily part of the Padres' long-term plans, here. And, you're able to use him to get a bullpen arm to help you out. You take advantage of that. Again, he's got the same ranking according to future value, according to Fangraphs, as Homer Bush Jr. I mean, he is a guy that's going to be back and forth. He might barely have a positive F-WAR when it's all said and done. But, not necessarily given too much up. If you look at MLB.com, and MLB Network's going to freak out about this. They're going to San Diego Padres gave up 3 of their top 12 prospects to get a bullpen piece. I think it's a good move for San Diego. You keep, obviously, Salas and DeVries, and I think those guys are still untouchable, and we'll see what happens as this trade deadline approaches, and we're going to have full coverage of the MLB trade deadline all week here on 97.3 The Fan. We're going to have all our shows tomorrow, probably breaking down this trade about Jason Adam being the new bullpen piece for the San Diego Padres, but on top of that, this is your go-to coverage for anything that's Padres related and trade deadline related. And that's honestly why we put this show together on Sundays, is we wanted to be able to talk about this stuff. I mean, could you imagine listening to national sports talk radio right now and they're talking about whether or not the Cowboys are going to sign CeeDee Lamb before the season starts? We're talking about Padres baseball. Jason Adam. And Jason Adam, to me, when you look at this deal from a what the Padres need perspective, it checks every single box. He's the perfect addition for the San Diego Padres. I've laid this out the last couple of weeks on the show. But if you look at what the Padres need to do at the deadline, and it's a puzzle. A.J. Preller's putting together a puzzle here of staying under $17 million, $10 to $17 million. A lot of that is impacted on whether or not Yu Darvish comes back, because right now you're not paying him, so you're saving some money. If Yu Darvish does come back, I mean, your initial budget in terms of staying underneath the competitive balance tax was around $10 million. Maybe you can increase it to 17 if Yu doesn't come back. That's kind of a gray area that the general public will never know what the real budget is, but that's kind of the range that you have. So you can't be going out there and acquiring guys that are making $20 million, $30 million this season, because even with it prorated, it's still going to take up a huge chunk of what you got. So they got to try to stay underneath that $17 million. In my opinion, they got to go get guys that have years of control. And Jason Adam has 2 more years of control after this. He's cheap. He's getting $2.7 million. So, you could factor about 60. You only have to pay about 60, maybe 55% of that, or 60 to, you have to pay less than that. You have to pay 40 to 35% of his contract this year, which is $2.7 million. So you're looking at maybe just under $1 million, maybe a little bit around $1 million, depending on how many games he's already been paid based on his game checks. But that's well in affordability for the San Diego Padres. You get years of control, and you upgraded the bullpen, which I think was your probably number one priority, maybe 2 if you're thinking about starting pitching. But the starting pitching for the Padres has been outstanding the last couple of games. This entire road trip, they've really carried the way. And I don't think you can never have enough pitching. I still think they need to get a starter, and there's still multiple starters available. But this checks a lot of boxes for the San Diego Padres. I think A.J. Preller did a really good job. Again, if you're just tuning in, it's the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning. We're here for you to talk Padres baseball in a specific time just like this. Padres, reportedly, according to Robert Murray, have acquired Jason Adam from the Tampa Bay Rays for Homer Bush Jr., Dylan Lesko, and J.D. Gonzalez. We're going to have more on the trade when we come back. We'll get to your phone calls. What do you think the Padres need to do next? What do you think about this deal? We'll get the YouTube chat fired up. I'll get through that and start looking through what you guys are saying. If you haven't checked it on us yet on YouTube, you can check us out on the 97.3 The Fan YouTube page. Also broadcasting on my YouTube page at @B_SURP. You can follow me on social media at the same handle at @B_SURP. This is the Braden Surprenant Show. We're talking more Padres trade deadline when we come back on San Diego's number one sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Welcome back to the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning. It's your first time tuning in to us. Thanks again for making our morning a part of yours. A lot of you are joining in because San Diego Padres have now officially confirmed the new deal with the Tampa Bay Rays. San Diego Padres have made a trade this morning to up their bullpen help. Jason Adam is now officially a San Diego Padre, as the Padres have now confirmed the trade. We have acquired, quote from the Padres on Twitter, we have acquired right-handed reliever Jason Adam from the Tampa Bay Rays in exchange for right-hander Dylan Lesko, outfielder Homer Bish Jr., and catcher J.D. Gonzalez. To make room on the 40-man roster, Glenn Otto has been designated for assignment. So it's all signed, sealed, and delivered. Padres got a brand-new bullpen arm. His name is Jason Adam, for all of you just tuning in. Pretty good job by the Padres again to acquire Jason Adam. Jason Adam, a guy that actually was part of the Padres organization for 1 year. He was drafted by the Kansas City Royals out of high school, out of Overland Park, Kansas. He was part of the Royals organization, was granted free agency, was part of the Twins organization, part of the Padres organization for a year, back to Kansas City, to Toronto, Chicago, and Tampa Bay has really turned him into a phenomenal pitcher in the back end. He comes in at 32 years old. Again, he's got a 2.49 ERA. He's got an ERA plus of a 157. He has put together 3 great years in Tampa as a bullpen piece, and he has 2 more years of control after this season. So you're going to have him for the rest of 2024, you're going to have him for all of 2025, and you're going to have him for all of 2026 before he becomes a free agent, arbitration eligible. It doesn't cost you a lot of money. It costs you some prospect capital. Again, for all of you just tuning in on some of these players, MLB.com has those guys all ranked in the top 12. Fangraphs, a little bit of a different story. A big problem for Dylan Lesko, and I don't want to just destroy the value of some of the Padres prospects going in a different direction. And you can't fully evaluate these things until years after some of these guys have stopped playing. And Dylan Lesko and Homer Bush Jr. and J.D. Gonzalez could all be really good players for the Tampa Bay Rays. But at the same time, you have to give up something in order to obtain something. And this just checks all the boxes. I think it'd be different if you were giving away or giving up these prospects for a half, and not even a half a season, because you've already gone through more than half of the season this year. But, less than half of a season of a bullpen piece, that would be a lot to give up. But 2 years of control, not going to have to pay him a lot of money. He's part of that bullpen. I mean, you are looking at a situation with this bullpen for the Padres. Now, assuming that Robert Suarez doesn't opt out at the end of 2025. But you're looking at a solid bullpen with years of control, all the way through 2026. I mean, you have Robert Suarez, again, assuming he doesn't opt out after the 2025 season, you have him through 2027. You have Jeremiah Estrada, if he can continue this success, you have him through 2029. He's only 25 years old. And Jason Adam, you have now until 2026. Through 2026. He's not a free agent until 2027. You add Adrian Morejon to that group, and you have him through the 2026 season. I mean, you theoretically, depending on what you want to do with Adrian Morejon, whether or not you want to make him a starter or a bullpen piece, because I know they've still kind of thrown that out there about building them back up, and that maybe that ship has sailed. I don't know. But you theoretically have a guy in the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th, all under contract, all not making a ton of money through the 2026 season. That's a great move for A.J. Preller. I mean, some of these deals work out and some of them don't. I think a lot of people are sitting there going like, wow, the Rays just robbed Preller blind because they got these 3 great prospects for a bullpen piece. I mean, that could be true. But a lot of the problems that Dylan Lesko has right now as a pitcher, and a lot of it is, throwing strikes. I mean, throwing, you could have the most electric stuff imaginable, but if you're a guy that can't throw strikes, you're going to be bouncing around organizations for the majority of your career. I mean, that happens all the time. That happens with high draft picks. That happens with international free agents. I mean, they got guys with that electric fastball that moves, that slider that can move across the zone from east to west, and that knockout changeup. I mean, there's so many things that a guy can have, but if he can't locate and he doesn't throw a strike, it doesn't even matter. You know, that could be something that the Padres, and you know what? I mean, they haven't, we've had a couple of recent rises of success of the farm system developing some players with Jackson Merrill, right? Fernando Tatis Jr. But, I mean, you haven't had a starting pitcher developed out of this organization since really Jake Peavy. And so maybe the Rays can do a little bit more with Dylan Lesko than the Padres can do, and with the Padres, he's just a different player. I like the trade. I think the trade is great for San Diego. I think it's a great addition. I don't think it's the last addition for San Diego. We're going to be monitoring the trade rumors as they come about, but that's a good pickup for San Diego. That bullpen was, I mean, even this week, think about this weekend with the success that the Padres have had. You were sweating out that game on Friday where the Padres are in Baltimore and they got a 2-run lead, and they pulled Estrada early, and then they went to Morejon, and Morejon didn't really have it, and you're sitting there going like, we can't, the Shield can't go out there and get Morejon. First of all, he's got to face 3 batters, but you're not going to make Robert Suarez get 6 outs. You really sweated that one through. And the Orioles ended up tying that game, and thank goodness for Mr. Relevant, Jurickson Profar, for another bomb to get you the lead, and then Suarez shut it down. The bullpen, man, it needs some help. It needed some help, and it got the help with now Jason Adam coming back to the Padres organization, spent a year with the Padres in the Arizona Fall League, as well as the San Antonio Missions before being granted free agency. Bounced around a lot of organizations, but as of right now, again, an ERA plus of 157. Guy's been great. That's a good pickup for the San Diego Padres. We're going to get your reactions when we come back. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. If you want to weigh in on the chat, you can do that as well on YouTube. You can watch us at 97.3 The Fan on YouTube. You can also check out my YouTube page at B_SURP, broadcasting on both of those as well as on Facebook and on Twitch. You could also follow me on social media at B_SURP on all social media platforms. Follow me at BSURP. Again, this is the Braden Surprenant Show. We're here each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10 on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Your reaction when we come back to Padres MLB trade deadline talk on a Sunday morning on 97.3 The Fan. Braden Surprenant Show live and local each and every Sunday morning. Go from 8 to 10. Usually, we're going to be preempted today by Sam Levitt and the Equal Water SoCal Padres pregame show. We'll have more coverage on the MLB trade deadline leading into a potential sweep Sunday for the San Diego Padres on a 7-game winning streak. Longest winning streak for the Padres all season, longest winning streak in the last couple of years for the San Diego Padres, and you couldn't have asked for a better winning streak at a better time than right before the trade deadline, but also during arguably one of your hardest road trips of the season, if not the hardest road trip of the season. You took on the best team in the best two teams in the American League, the Baltimore Orioles and the Cleveland Guardians. The best two teams in the American League. You took 2 out of 3 from both of them. You could potentially sweep one of them today. I mean, an 8-1 road trip on this 9-game stretch in 11 days. Actually, really in 11 days. That would be remarkable. And that's a good spark. And the guys are playing really well. The starting pitching has been great for the San Diego Padres. Outstanding. You got a no-hitter from Dylan Cease, and everybody else, like before Dylan and after Dylan on this road trip, has just continued to build off each other. I mean, Matt Waldron was exceptional in his first outing of the trip that resulted in a Padres loss. It was the bullpen that gave it up. Don't have to worry about that as much anymore with the addition of Jason Adam. San Diego Padres making the trade this morning. If you're just waking up, and you're getting your breakfast ready, you're driving to the store potentially, get the last-minute needs for the weekend, making your Costco trips, getting gas for the week, and you're getting ready for Padres baseball coming up, and you haven't heard the news, San Diego Padres have made a trade. Padres have officially made this official as they acquired Jason Adam from the Rays for Homer Bush Jr., Dylan Lesko, and J.D. Gonzalez. Jason Adam, the Rays setup man, 4-2 with a 2.49 ERA this year. Has pitched in 47 games, has gone 47 innings, a 1.57 ERA plus, a 3.34 fielding independent pitching, and a 0.894 WAR this season. Guy's been exceptional. Jason Adam also is only getting paid $2.7 million this year, which means you're going to only have to pay a fraction of that for the rest of the season. That saves you a ton of money. On top of the $17 million you have, give or take, to work with at this trade deadline to stay underneath the competitive balance tax. You add a bullpen piece. He's under multiple years of control. He becomes a free agent in 2027, so you got him for the rest of 24, all of 25, and all of 26. You didn't really touch too much of your budget. And sure, you gave up a starting pitcher, but I will say this. I mean, if you look at Fangraphs, and here's the thing, like Jeff Passan put out yesterday because a couple of trades were made where guys that were prospects were ranked 20-something in their organizations, and people are like, wow, this guy stinks, or he's not as good as getting somebody in the top 10. A lot of those rankings don't get updated in the middle of the season. Fangraphs just recently did or redid their rankings. They did it on July 14th. So this is the most updated rankings that we have for a farm system, for farm systems, would be Fangraphs. That's why I've been using Fangraphs. So according to MLB.com, and that one hasn't been updated since the beginning of the season, MLB.com says the Padres have given up 3 top 12 prospects in the organization. And that just freaks people out. They go, I can't believe we just gave up 3 top-tier prospects for a bullpen piece. That's not even a closer. But if you look at Fangraphs, who just recently updated the rankings, and again, it's one rankings versus the other, and the rankings that the teams have are different than the ones that they put out in public from all these different sources and all these different outlets. But if you look at the prospect rankings for Fangraphs, and again, I've said it earlier on the show, but I just kind of keep reiterating it for all the new people out there that keep going, I can't believe we gave this many people up. Dylan Lesko, according to Fangraphs, is the number 4th best prospect in the organization. He's 5 on Baseball America in their mid season rankings. He was, I think he's 4 on MLB.com or 3 on MLB.com. His future value is of 50. Again, the future value that's a part of this deal is based on the 2080 scouting scale for Major League Baseball, and then using Fangraphs' formulas that they use to determine F4 and what the projected F4 is. Again, trying to guess what this player would do at the Major League level. According to the 50 future value ranking, Dylan Lesko is a number 4 starter. I mean, he's not a pitcher that was going to be a major impact in the next 2 to 3 years in the starting rotation. Maybe a little bit after that, but not too much. And he will probably be, out of the 3 players that the Padres have parted ways with, he will probably be one of the better prospects or one of the better players the Rays get in return. People have said the same thing about when the Padres traded Luis Patino. He didn't work out. I mean, sometimes these guys work out and sometimes they don't. So maybe he will. I mean, his biggest problem, again, we've talked about it, is his inability to throw strikes. He's been struggling with throwing strikes. That's why he struggled this year in the minor leagues with his numbers. That's something maybe the Rays can fix. If they can fix it, he's going to be a really good starter for them in the back end of the rotation. And maybe he's one of those guys that you look at in 5 or 6 years when you're looking at the Rays and they're talking about, wow, what a nasty rotation they have, and they start listing all these players. A lot of that is the success of the development of Tampa Bay. I mean, they develop better than a lot of other organizations. A little bit more so maybe than just talent pickup. I mean, the Padres are not good at developing talent. They're not. They haven't been. I mean, you could say what you want about how they develop talent. I mean, when you compare them against the other teams in Major League Baseball, they're near the bottom when it comes to developing their own talent. They're great at finding the talent. They're not necessarily great at developing that talent. That's something the Rays are great at doing. So I think whatever you send Tampa Bay, they might just turn those players into good, serviceable Major League players. But Dylan Lesko, again, he's projected to be a number 4 starter with his ranking on the scale. Homer Bush Jr. and J.D. Gonzalez are expected to be up and down guys. So does it look like a lot for 3 players? Yeah, it looks like a lot. It's a seller's market. I mean, Philly gave up a lot of good prospects for a rental in Carlos Estevez to be in their back end of their bullpen. At least with the Padres, you get a couple of years of control of this guy. And I think you have to ask the question, who helps you make a World Series over the next 3 years more? Is it Jason Adam or is it Dylan Lesko? I think it's Jason Adam for where you are at right now. I mean, in my open, we have the clip of me talking about you can't punt on Manny Machado prime years. I mean, these are prime years for Machado and Bogarts and these young players, these younger guys still in their prime. I mean, not necessarily young for Major League Baseball, but you mix those guys in with Fernando. There's only so many more years you can have of these guys, technically playing at their peak. You want the best talent around them at the time. That's why I love the trade. This is obviously not it for the Padres. They got starting pitching issues all over the place. As pointed out by Kyle Glazier on social media, and Adam Klug, our program director, put it in the chat, quote, important context for understanding this trade. Padres officials have been very, in all caps, concerned about how much Lesko's command not only hasn't come back post Tommy John, but is getting worse. We talked about, I bring this up a lot of times on shows. I talk about it on this show. I talk about it on Annie and Elston, which is the show that I'm a part of each and every day from 10 to 2. This is the first time hearing me. But there's a reason why the Padres traded away C.J. Abrams. They believed more in Jackson Merrill and what he could do. They liked him developing more than what C.J. Abrams did, and they were willing to part ways with C.J. Abrams because they know they had Jackson Merrill in their back pocket. The same thing could be said about some of these starting pitchers, right? I mean, Adam Mazur's the top prospect in the Padres organization as well. I mean, Padres fans freak out every time he gets a start. You just never know. But he's had some serious command issues. Obviously, the Padres are concerned about those command issues from Dylan Lesko. And if Tampa can fix it, they got a great pitcher with great stuff coming to their organization. If they can't, they got something out of one of their better bullpen pieces, and this is probably the best deal that they're going to get for a guy like Jason Adam. I think it's a good trade all around for both teams. I think the Rays, who are one of the best teams at developing players, especially pitchers, have something they can work with. They have a project they can fix that's going to turn potentially to gold for them. The Padres get a developed bullpen piece to help fortify that bullpen. And we're off and running here on the trade deadline for the Padres. That's the third trade made this year. Remember, I mean, if you want to throw in all the other stuff, you have Dylan Cease acquired. You have Luis Arraez acquired. Now bringing Jason Adam. A.J. Preller's done a phenomenal job. He's done a phenomenal job in doing all of these things to improve the ball club with a lot of restrictions that he hasn't had in previous years. The budget of the competitive balance tax. He has been very creative in acquiring these players, getting other teams to pay contracts, using some of his prospect capital to acquire these good players. Again, he does a great job of loading up on more players. I mean, he's retooled his farm system 3 times already. So you can say what you want about parting ways with some of these guys. I mean, there's no guarantee that they're all going to be great. We just assume that all these top prospects are going to be these great players that are going to help this major league club out and offset costs. You know who's offsetting costs? Jason Adam. Jason Adam is doing that at the major league level in a proven sense. He is a bullpen piece that is very affordable. I mean, he is cheaper right now than Wandy Peralta and Yuki Matsui. We'll see what he gets in arbitration. I can't imagine him getting anything more than double of what he's making right now. And even if the guy makes double in arbitration, he's still making around what Wandy Peralta's making next year. And he's still making less than Yuki Matsui, and he's got better numbers than both of those players. Padres are obviously not done. I don't think they're going to be done. And according to Bob Nightingale, who tweeted this out after the trade, San Diego Padres, after acquiring reliever Jason Adam from the Tampa Bay Rays, say they are now aggressively focusing on a starting pitcher with their young staff, which I guess would be like Waldron and King, Vasquez, Major, and Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove still out. Young staff, Darvish and Musgrove are still out. I think you really need to hit starting pitching. I mean, if the Padres can get one starter during this trade deadline, I think they're in really good shape. And before I thought the beggars can't be choosers move would be acquire a catcher. I think that'd be icing on the cake. I don't think you really need that anymore with Campusano and Higgy. They're doing a good enough job. But if you get a starting pitcher before Tuesday and you can get one more bat, I think the team needs one more bat with the addition of Fernando coming back and Bogart's hitting the way he's hitting right now. You got a pretty formidable foe in the San Diego Padres. And you definitely got a ball club that nobody wants to play. And as I talk about that right now in the 97 through the Fan Studios, Blake Snell's highlights on MLB Network had a great outing yesterday for San Francisco. Giants are thinking about trading him. We've talked about on Andy Nelson. I'd like to see the Padres go after Nick Martinez. Right now they could probably afford both Nick Martinez and Blake Snell, and then you don't go get a bat. But that's a good move to start the day with Jason Adam. We'll see what happens any further on the starting pitching market. We'll see if the Padres are active here. It just needed a little bit of igniting, and once A.J. Preller gets ignited, man, he goes on a tear. And we'll see what the Padres can sign up for here in just a little bit as we are now approaching the trade deadline coming up on Tuesday. Again, we'll have full coverage of the MLB trade deadline this week, pre, during, and post MLB trade deadline. We'll have the Padres Roundtable presented by Roundtable Pizza coming up on Wednesday. It'll be at Wednesday at 10 in the morning. That's going to be a great overall reaction show for all of us here on 97.3 The Fan to give our reactions to what the Padres may do. It might just be Jason Adam. I don't think it is. I think it's going to be more than just Jason Adam. And as Bob Nightingale is reporting, they're looking for a starting pitcher. And there's some starting pitchers available. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next hour, what that next move is for the Padres. I mean, you start going through the list, and Jack Flaherty is available. Padres have a fit potentially for him. Yusei Kikuchi is available from Toronto. Jameson Taillon is available for Chicago. I mean, a lot of these players, Cal Quantrill, former Padre, is available. They list Blake Snell as potentially being available. Blake Snell's contract is not as scary as you think it is either. Not as scary as you think it is either. We could talk more about that in the next hour or so. Again, we only have another 30 minutes left in this show. Want to get the fans involved, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Give me a shout. Let me know what you're thinking about this Padres deal, where you think they need to go to next. If you got some player ideas that you think the Padres should go after and pursue, let's kick the can around. Let's talk about it. Let's play a little general manager here with AJ Preller. Keep weighing in on the chat. We'll try to see if Sam Levitt wants to jump in and talk a little bit about this here coming up in the next 30 minutes. But we got you covered on trade deadline talk right now as the Padres, as I mentioned before, have made a deal this morning to acquire Jason Adam, right-handed reliever from the Tampa Bay Rays, for Homer Bush Jr., Dylan Lesko, and J.D. Gonzalez. Padres' 7-game winning streak gets you on the high. Trade pickup on a Sunday gets you on a high. And don't look now, Padres fans. Take looking at the standings. Dodgers blew another game last night. Padres only 5.5 out of first place. 5.5 games out of first place. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying I'm putting money on it. I'm not saying it even matters. But what I am saying is they're in striking distance. At this point last year, the Padres were 9 games behind the Dodgers in first place. Today, 5.5. Big game coming up against the Orioles later on today. According to AJ Cassaville, no, Jason Adam will not be available for the Padres. He'll probably meet the Padres back home in San Diego as they get ready to take on the Dodgers this week. I'm Braden Surprenant. This is the Braden Surprenant Show. Thanks again for tuning in. Got a lot of trade deadline talk to talk about when we come back on 97.3 The Fan. How's a fast first hour talking Padres trades at the deadline? San Diego Padres making a deal today. As I mentioned before, they have now acquired Jason Adam from the Tampa Bay Rays in exchange for Homer Bush Jr., Dylan Lesko, and JD Gonzalez. It's so funny on these trade deadline shows. I mean, everybody always goes like, they got fleeced. Padres fleeced the Rays. Rays fleeced the Padres. Nobody has any idea. You have any idea? I already got like texts in the group chats right now going like, is it just me or like did we get absolutely fleeced? Not really. But at the same time, it's like Jason Adam is a really good pitcher with years of control. And obviously there's major concerns with Dylan Lesko that the Padres feel is a situation that they're willing to part ways with. I talked about the tweet before, and I'll say it again on here with Kyle Glazier, and he does a great job of covering, baseball, and he worked for Baseball America for a long time covering the minor leagues. But some important context when talking about Dylan Lesko. Let's talk about Dylan Lesko, because I think Dylan Lesko is the one piece that everybody goes like, I can't believe we gave up a future starting pitcher for a bullpen piece. Here's two tweets about Dylan Lesko. Important is according to Kyle Glazier. You can follow him on Twitter at Kyle A. Glazier on X, whatever. Important context for understanding this trade. Padres officials have been very, and very is in all caps, have been very concerned about how much Lesko's command not only hasn't come back post-Tommy John, but is getting worse. Stuff is fantastic, but the command is extremely poor right now. We'll see if the Rays can fix him. If there's a team that can fix him, it's the Tampa Bay Rays. But let's talk about it from a context of the San Diego Padres. Let's say Dylan Lesko goes to Tampa and becomes their number 4 starter in the future, and he's really good. That's not a guarantee that he was going to do that in the Padres organization. I think a lot of people just go like, well, he does so well here, he would have done so much, he would have done the same in our spot. That's not necessarily true. Some organizations develop players better than others. Tampa Bay is one of the best. That's their whole philosophy on how to win. There's multiple ways to win in Major League Baseball. Multiple. You can do what the Dodgers, well, really, the Dodgers do a couple of things. They have the resources to do multiple of these things. But you could do the classic Yankees approach, right? Where, you're the 90s Yankees. You have all the money in the world. You have more money than God. And you could go buy a team. A lot of outlets want to say that you can't buy it. You could buy a team. Teams do it all the time. They do it in every sport. And the narrative is like, oh, you can't just buy. You could buy a team. If you buy the right players, you could buy a team. You could get the best players to show up during free agency by spending money. It depends how much you want to spend. It depends how much you want to just give away. The Yankees do that a lot. The Mets do that a lot. You could go out there and buy a team. The Yankees have done it in the past. The other way you can win a World Series is by drafting and developing players. And that's what the Rays do. They draft, they sign international free agents, they develop, they make the guys the best they could be, they get the best years out of them, and then they ship them off. That's another approach to doing things. The downside to that approach, of course, is when the guys get really good and they're about to be in prime years, you let them walk. The Braves have done that. The Braves have done a little bit more than, like, they've taken the Rays philosophy and then they've added the contract extensions on top of that. Plus, they're not afraid to sign big contracts to some free agents to help facilitate their development. But the Rays part ways with guys that are good to get more replacements on projects. I mean, they don't have a lot of money. I mean, their payroll is $90 million right now, if I'm not mistaken. If I looked at it according to Fangraphs, their payroll right now is $90 million. That's including the $2.7 million with Jason Adam, which he's officially been moved over to the Padres payroll thing now. So they paid him, I should probably say on here. The Rays have paid Jason Adam $1.7 million this season, 1.785. So you, as the Padres, are paying him just under $1 million. What a great pickup for the Padres. But anyway, back to Tampa Bay. Multiple ways to win a World Series. Again, they do the drafting and developing, but again, when the players are good, they ship them off for a project. Imagine, let's talk about Jackson Merrill for a second. If you live by the philosophy of just drafting and developing because you don't have a lot of money, then you would have to take a guy like, they do it the old Padre way, but they do it way better. Sand Cactus Man in the chat. That would be like having Jackson Merrill, right? Let's say Jackson Merrill continues to play at this level that he's playing at for the next couple of years, and then when he's 26, right? I think he'd be 26, maybe 27 when he becomes a free agent, you just let him walk. Can you imagine doing that like Fernando Tatis Jr.? You just let him walk? You don't sign him to the contract? That's what the Rays do. I mean, that's one way to do it, but would you rather have that never win a World Series because the Rays can't win it and just be good every single year? I mean, that's a different way to do it. They obviously have different budgetary restraints. But the kind of happy medium between that is what the Dodgers have done, and that's spend money with the top free agents, at least the players that fit their mold, develop the others, and have a really competitive team. But to go back to what I was originally saying, just because a player that you traded away does well with another organization, assuming he's not just a major league talent, right? I mean, a major league talent's already developed. You don't have to worry about that anymore. But when you're talking about trading prospects, just because you traded a prospect and that prospect becomes a good player, doesn't mean he was going to be a good player for you. I mean, you could look at Andres Munoz, right? So Andres Munoz is that big piece, one of the big pieces that got sent to Seattle in the Austin Nola deal, and everybody freaks out about it. We could have had him. He could have been on the team still. He could have been on the team still. And you know what? He could have still had success here in San Diego. But the thing with Andres Munoz is he was coming off Tommy John surgery, and they didn't know who he was going to be. And Dylan Lesko, coming off Tommy John surgery, can't find the strike zone. I mean, that could have literally happened to Andres Munoz. And if the Mariners are better at developing talent than the Padres, I'm not saying they are or they aren't, and they can fix some of the problems that maybe the Padres don't see, again, using just vague examples here, the player that you sent away developed with the other organization. He became very good, but that doesn't mean he was going to be very good as part of this organization. I mean, what do we think? You don't know. I mean, the White Sox all the time, right? The White Sox fans always bitch and moan about the fact that they traded away Fernando Tatis Jr. for James Shields. There's no guarantee that that White Sox would have got great Fernando. So you don't know. So as fun as it is, I mean, a lot of people like to bitch about deals. They like to bitch about trades. They like to be the Monday morning quarterback 3 or 4 years down the road. This was terrible. That was terrible. This was terrible. In the moment of the situation, that's when you got to make your decision. You know, you see it all the time. I coach high school football, right? And then, you deal with parents all the time, and the people in the stands always have their opinions on what you should or should not be doing. You should be playing this kid. You should not be playing this kid. You should be playing my kid. You should not be playing this kid. Everything is great. My dad told me this, as somebody that has coached for a long time, talking to me as I became a coach, and you would be irritated with some of the stuff that people would say and yell in the stands. It happens all the time. And we do it all the time as fans. I do it as a job. Right? I mean, my job as a sports talk radio host, and I simplify it as this. When you're doing sports talk radio, you play commissioner, you play owner, you play general manager, and you play manager coach. That's what you do. That's what sports talk radio is. I'm giving you ideas of hey, would you rather trade this or trade that? I'm putting the general manager hat on your head. Let me know what you think. That's what sports talk radio is. That's what we're doing. But it's easy to sit here and say it than it is to show it and have my product on the field. My dad told me that when I was coming up as a coach, and I wanted to start coaching. I got to get irritated with some parents that were, bitching and moaning, or guys thinking they should do this and that. And they just don't understand. They're not there every day. It's easy to criticize when it's not your product on the field. It's easy to criticize when it's not your livelihood at stake. It's easy to criticize when, you don't get to show what you would do in that moment. You just sit there and always evaluate what other people have done instead of doing it yourself. I get on guys all the time. I get on organizations all the time. I mean, this is my job. But at the same time, my product's not on the field. I'm not making these decisions. So I think, in all fairness of being in this critical position of playing, again, commissioner, general manager, owner, manager, coach, I think you have to weigh in the context of the situation. Right now, here's the context. You got two players that, again, I'm going to go on Fangraphs, but you don't know how the Padres evaluate these guys either. We're just assuming the Padres gave up 3 of their top 12 prospects because a website told us, because MLB.com told us. You know how many times general managers and scouts lie to the reporters that to cover prospects? All these outlets that cover the minor leagues, like they read box scores and they watch it on TV and go like, well, this guy's really good. You know how the evaluation is different. The evaluation is different. So when you look at what the Padres have given up, I mean, let's talk about the context here. The Padres needed what? They needed a bullpen piece. They needed a guy with years of control to make it make sense, right? It had to make sense. If you gave up all these prospects for a rental for just this team, it wouldn't be a good move. It'd be an idiotic move. The Phillies gave up just as much to acquire Carlos Estevez for a rental. If the Padres did this for a rental, I wouldn't be this fired up about the deal. It'd be like, what are we doing? This is not your best chance to win a World Series. But it's not. You got the years of control of this player. You have added again, cheap, controllable talent to your organization that's going to offset some of the big costs. Maybe Jason Adams got what it takes to be a closer in the future should Robert Suarez opt out at the end of 2025. Right? I mean, let's seriously. So again, context. Dylan Lesko, based on the reports that I just told you that Kyle Glazier has said, Padres officials have been very concerned about how much Lesko's command not only hasn't come back post-Tommy John, but is getting worse. Again, stuff is fantastic, but command is extremely poor right now. We'll see if the Rays can fix him. If the Rays fix him, great. The Padres don't sound like they can fix this guy on their own. So again, just because Tampa Bay might be able to fix this guy doesn't mean he was going to be the player that he was promised on these websites, part of the organization. Fangraphs has him ranked as a future number 4 starter. It's not like you're giving up a future ace. You're not giving up Dylan Cease. You're giving up Dylan Lesko, who's 1-9 with a 6.46 ERA in Fort Wayne this year. 69 2/3 innings, has 52 walks, 12 hit batters, and 10 wild pitches. Fastball command in particular has been extremely poor. Rays are making a bet they can fix him. The Padres have the low risk part of this trade. The Rays are going all in on trying to fix something that is a major project. Look, I've seen this before. I got a friend that's battling right now in the minor leagues. He has battled on team to team to team to team. I played with him in high school. Known his family forever. He got drafted out of high school. Was with the Twins organization. He's bounced around. He can't find, I don't know what, he can't throw strikes. Yeah, he's 29 now. He can't throw strikes. That's a problem. It doesn't matter how much stuff you got. If you can't throw strikes, that is a major problem. And maybe Tampa can fix Lesko, but unless they do, it's a great move for the Padres. Great move for the Padres. Don't overvalue. And again, I'm using Fangraphs as an example. There's multiple rankings out there, and none of them work for the teams. All the teams have their own ranking system. So based on what I see right now in front of me of what A.J. Preller did, again, it could work, it could not. It's the same thing as being a manager, right? Manager, I have never once seen a fan base go, I love my manager's ability to manage a bullpen. I have never once seen that. Name me one time some fan base goes, this guy is great at managing a bullpen. He does it exactly like how I would do it as I sit on my couch and drink a Diet Miller and eat puffed Cheetos. Guy can't manage a bullpen like me. How many fan bases say they can that their manager manages a bullpen great? Nobody. And why is that? Because even in baseball, if you push all the right buttons, it fails. Take Friday, for example. Mike Schilt might have pulled Estrada a little bit too early. Again, hindsight's 2020. But based on the situation, he went with his best bullpen arms. It'd be Cheetos Puffs. I was blanking on there for a second, Diesel. He went with his best three bullpen arms, and they still almost lost the game. It's possible. It happens all the time. There's times where guys are going to blow saves. You could push all the right pieces. Let's say you give like Manny Machado the day off, right? He gets the day off. It's late in the game. You got the bases loaded. You got Bryce Johnson coming to the plate with one out, and you decide to pinch hit Manny Machado for Bryce Johnson, and Manny grounds out into a double play. You did all the right things, and it still didn't work. It's the same thing with being a general manager. It's just more scrutinized because people have that FOMO of, that guy could be doing that for us. Why isn't he doing it for us? He was promised to do it for us, and now he's doing it for Cleveland. It's a good pickup for the Padres. Bullpen help. Didn't cost a lot of money. You parted ways with things that you don't think, with players you don't think you can fix or are not going to have a future value for your major league club. And you got a guy with years of control. You checked all the boxes. You did what you needed to do. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, that happens. You know what it's called? It's called baseball. Final thoughts about this trade. We'll give you a quick preview of the Padres and Orioles. Padres trying to go for a sweep today against Baltimore. Going to be a very quick segment getting you up to the Equal Water SoCal Padres pregame show with Sam Levitt coming up next on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Welcome back to the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning, reacting to the Padres trade deadline pickup of Jason Adam from the Tampa Bay Rays. We're leading you into the EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show with Sam Levitt. And joining me right now is Sam to talk a little bit more about this trade. Plus, got some more news for you. Let's really quickly, I know Bob Nightingale reported the Padres are looking at starting pitching help. They're not done yet. John Heyman reported about an hour ago, uber aggressive Padres are among half dozen teams to check in on their former pitcher Blake Snell, who won his second Cy Young for them in 2023. First of all, I know you put a video out on social media, Sam, but reaction to the trade? What are your thoughts on the Padres trade?
Yeah, look, I think from the Padres' perspective, they get something they badly needed, which was another high-leverage arm. Jason Adam is absolutely that, right? Somebody who slots in really well with Suarez and Estrada and Morejon, and it really goes from a big three in the back end of the bullpen now to a big four. You look at his numbers, traditional numbers, the swing and miss stuff. Adam is exactly the kind of guy that they needed in the bullpen. So from that perspective, they did really well. They got a guy they needed, and I think you would agree, Braden, this was a need, right? I mean, they needed kind of desperately another reliever. The price was high. It's a steep price. They had to give up 12, or I should say 3 out of their top 12 prospects, according to MLB.com. Look, Dylan Lesko has had a tough year. Command has been a real issue for him. Meanwhile, he was still a top 100 prospect, according to MLB.com, maybe the top pitching prospect in the organization, and he's going to go to a place in the Rays that is notorious for developing guys. So I guess we're going to see if they can get him back on track, giving up Homer Bush Jr., somebody I really liked in spring training, has some really good tools. We'll see what he is. And J.D. Gonzalez, who's, a young catcher, but a top 12 prospect. Again, just going off the MLB.com rankings, and all these different publications have different rankings for these guys. So look, the price was steep. You do have to consider, obviously, that Adam has a couple of years left of control after this one. So that's significant. I would think that's part of the reason why the price was so high. But it's steep. They got something they really needed. Time will tell what Lesko is. Look, Braden, did they run the risk of Lesko being a star and an ace one day? Yeah. I mean, look, you always run that risk when you give up a guy of that caliber. I think the Padres filled the need, but the price was very high, and I think time will tell whether it was too much to give up. And also it depends on what Adam is, for this team. So we shall see, as always, with these trades. I think it's easy to always overreact. Everybody wants to say, oh, they got fleeced, it was an overpay. Right. You know what? Look, let's be fair about it. Look at some of the trades. Now, it's gone the other way, too. Padres have given up some players that have gone on to do really great things. But, go look at speaking of a Rays trade, go look at the Tampa Bay trade for Blake Snell a number of years ago, right? And what those guys became. You just don't know.
I mean, a lot of people said the same thing about Luis Patino going over there, right? He was going to be the future ace of the Tampa Bay Rays, and now he's back part of the Padres organization on the injured list. So that's what it is on that. According to Fangraphs, the amount of money around, obviously this is not official, but give or take, they're right around $900,000 that the Padres still have to pay to Jason Adams. So that's very affordable to that $10 million to $17 million range, depending on what's going on with Yu Darvish in terms of staying underneath the competitive balance tax. I thought this trade, I know we got a little bit of time left, but we're going to get you ready for your show. I thought the trade hit on all three things that the Padres needed to hit on in terms of a trade. It was a need, obviously, in bullpen help. It was a cheap pickup in terms of salary. It was a controllable piece for the San Diego Padres. And, even though you gave up some young players, I think it fits your window more so than the players that you gave up.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. Like, look, as far as outfield, Homer Bush Jr. is probably a ways away. Like, Lesko's a ways away. J.D. Gonzalez a ways away. You're right. For right here, right now, salary, need, control. Yeah, they got a really good piece back, and people shouldn't overlook that. Was the price steep? Yes. But don't overlook what they got back. And this is a team that, the window, let's not forget, the window is now.
Yes.
So
it's not when Lesko and Bush and those guys are coming up through the ranks.
I know.
It's
Let's be real about it. So steep price. It's also the market, Braden.
Right.
Like look at what the Royals had to give up for Hunter Harvey. Look at what the Phillies had to give up for Estevez. It's the market right now.
And you got some good value with multiple years back. Sam will be up next with the Eco Water SoCal Padres pregame show. I'm Braden Surprenant. Thanks again for tuning in to the Braden Surprenant Show. You can catch us each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10 talking Padres baseball. It's fun talking with you guys again. Enjoy Padres baseball, and I will talk to you guys this week on Andy and Elston, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.